will get first question was asked in advance, and that is, what inspired you to run for school board, and what personal strengths or expertise did you bring to this? We'll start here to my left with Rachel.
So what personally inspired me to run for school board is I come from a family that believes heavily in service, and as you have time, you look for opportunities to serve. Watching the school board meetings over the past few years, I have always been passionate about education. I like learning. I think that it's great for everybody to learn. And I realize learning is a lifelong skill, and that's something that I like to see our students developing so that when they get out of school, they will continue to learn, whether they go to college or start a business, learning never stops. And so I decided to run with that framework.
Good morning. My name is Hugh Carter, and I'm running for one of the 4-year seats. I'm running for re-election. I tell people that my first name is Yolanda Franklin, so there's only 2 others. What inspired me to run initially for the school board was an example that was set by my mom when she graded for school board when I was in middle school in a small town in Missouri, Kearney, Missouri. She ended up being the first woman ever elected to that school board, and really taught me the value of service and giving back to the community. Within this school district, my children have been immensely blessed by the opportunities that they've been given here. And I really wanted to have to work to provide those opportunities to every student that comes through this district. During my first term, we had an opportunity to set a strategic plan, and I feel like because of the pandemic and other factors, we haven't been able to finish the work that we started, and I want to continue that work to provide for teachers and for students.
I thought about running for school board off and on over the years. I had 2 kids, so I wasn't a huge priority while I was doing kid stuff. I really thought about it 2 years ago. I was concerned about some of the decision making made by the school board during the COVID pandemic. And the artist warned me about that. Thank you. And my family situation at the time, my dad had been diagnosed with lung cancer and put that off. Mainly this go around, I just had several friends who are administrators, former administrators who USC Flying, so teachers, former teachers. I've seen things happen while my kids have been in school that concern me, that need to be changed, that seem to be ignored by the school district for all these years. And I think that we need to take that different step forward and focus on some of the things that are more pressing issues. Thank you.
Graduating from the University of Lawrence is what inspired me to run for school board. That inspiration to become a part of a community of leaders. To become the voice of parents and grandparents at the school board table was another inspiration. A voice to, for the ones that's not sure where their tax dollars are truly going. What I bring is real life experiences. Coming from a home who both parents picked cotton, my parents would have never thought of raising a child who's now running for a public seat. In elementary school, my race was not allowed to rent school equipment from the schools or instruments. So we couldn't do instruments in school. So I'm here to be that bridge for the community. So no other parent or child has to deal with the things that I went through in school. So my inspiration to run is because I am here now.
Good morning, I'm Ann Costello. As some of the other people mentioned, I'm partly inspired by my mother. She worked for the chamber, was on the library board. I sat for many city commission meetings and all that with her growing up. But I'm also a parent of 2 kids in the district. My husband is a teacher in the district, so this is very personal to me, and I want the best education for all students in the district. I've been on site councils, the superintendent's advisory council, the school's foundation board, as well as the futures committee. All of those things have been great and have given me a lot of experience, a little bit more knowledge of the school finance and district operations, but they do allow me to have a very big impact. And so that's what I'm really looking to do, is have an impact. As far as the skills I bring with me, In my job, I have managed several $100 million budgets, working obviously cross collaboratively with team, as a team, and then just listening to all, hearing the voice. I think that that's something that's really important, and I'm glad to see that the board start to do with some of their listening sessions. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Shannon, Kimball. I believe Lawrence is one of the greatest places in our state to live and raise a family. Certainly that's why my husband and I are here with our 3 children who that are or have attended Lawrence Public Schools. And I also believe that our students deserve the best education that we are possibly able to provide to them. And that is what has motivated me to serve for the past 12 years on this board, and it's what's motivated me to ask for your vote to continue serving on this board. In terms of the strengths and expertise that I bring to this role, I think that is what really sets me apart as a candidate and as a board member. I have been doing this work for the past 12 years. I have a very deep knowledge base in public education policy. I have extensive experience in board governance. I have extensive experience in advocacy, and I have been doing that work very aggressively at the local, state, and national levels now for a number of years, and that is something that our board needs in order to solve not only the challenges that we face locally, but also the issues that we need to be advocates for outside of our community. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Ariel Meyer. I'm running for that 2-year seat. I was inspired to run by all of the conversations I've had in this community the last couple of years where there was just too many negative outcomes when it came to the education system here. I was a classroom substitute teacher last year, and so I really saw how the decisions at the top can affect that classroom level, our students, which is what I'm fighting for, is our children. I believe my strength is that I can bring some more collaboration between the different entities in this community. I think the school district and the city, they both have separate strategic plans. But do we have a long-term strategic plan that is interwoven between the chamber, the school district, the city, the county? So I would like to work on the collaboration to find our solutions.
Thank you. Pass the line now to GR. Yes, motion on, and then we'll wrap it back here to finish with Rachel. When we go to that end of the table, Ariel will have the answer first. And this is another 60 seconds. What is your vision for public education in this community?
My vision for public education in this community reflects the work that we started with the strategic plan. And that is to work on reading, to achieve reading comprehension goals by 3rd grade for all students, math goals by 8th grade. And then more broadly is to work with all of our students to make sure that they are ready for their chosen path when they graduate. So individually work with them to make sure whatever they want to do when they leave our care, that they are prepared to do that, whether that be college, technical school, the military, community college, that we have prepared them by working with them, and we understand what their goals are, and that we have prepared them to achieve that.
What I would like to see first and foremost is safe schools, safe for students, safe for teachers. I don't really think at the present moment that high schools are for a lot of people, for teachers or for students. I think that we also need to focus, like the laser beam, on academics. I'm somewhat concerned that we are lowering standards to boost the outcomes. For example, reducing class schedules so truancy rates will improve, reducing credits for graduation. I think there's some grade inflation going on. I don't think that's helping students. I also think that there's learning loss from being online. We need to focus on teaching in a different manner than we have in years past. I know that from current experience with my son at the high school level. And I also think we need to be fiscally responsible. I truly believe that we should have forensic audit to determine where our dollars are really going. I realize that there's been audits before, but I think that that's something that we need to see because the general public cannot find out exactly where money is spent.
Amen.
I would like to see more support for our students, like more support for our students, especially our minority students. I would love to see this community be as vibrant as we say we are for public education. So putting more things in the plan long term for our children is what we truly need to make sure that when they do graduate, that they are prepared for real life. Because outside of graduation, there are real life experiences that they will face. And we have to make sure that they are not only graduating from high school with an education, but that they are truly prepared for real life.
So I think what I envision is increased or focus on academics and really looking to close the achievement gap between our minority students, our students from lower SES, and our students in special education, and raise them up. As a board, we need to set clear goals and benchmarks for achievement, and be able to track that progress and receive reports back. Those goals need to be smart. I think we all know what a SMART goal is, but we need to evaluate that progress and make sure that we're doing it. We've had a lot of distraction with the budget and with COVID, so I think we need to put focus back on that. But I think as a part of that, it's important to make sure that we are paying our teachers well, so that we can retain them and we don't have this continual staff turnover. I think we need to look at attendance and safety, as Jody said. Also, I think those are some of the main things that I think are important.
I think everyone here has probably heard the phrase, community raises a child. And a lot of people in this day and age think that that community is the parents and the school. But that's not true. There's more people who are also involved. They play sports. There's sports coaches and their parents will help out there. It's also, if they go to any other events. And my vision for the school district is more collaboration and integration with the community itself. As Yolanda's talked about, part of the goal of the school district is to prepare students for the real world. That is much easier if they are out in the community getting that experience. If they have an idea from their plan or personal individualized education plan, they know what they want to do, well, let's get them working with people in those industries so that they can start developing those skills and be more confident as they leave. So that's my vision.
My vision for public education in Lawrence is based on my view that education is the bedrock of democracy, and I think we need to protect that and restore the confidence in this public education system here. I believe education to be a public good and that it should remain a public institution that we support. I think I'm pretty equity driven. I believe that every school in the Lawrence community should be equitable so that it doesn't matter if you live on the east side or west side, there's no divide, that every school offers the same equitable opportunities. I have concerns about marginalized students. I have a minority, multiracial child myself, and equity is very important to me. Thank you.
So my vision for our school district and education in our community is informed by the community's vision. I think that I share a lot of the kinds of goals that have been talked about, but I also think one of the things that we need to do in our community as a whole is to refocus our narrative around public education. There are a lot of things going really well in our school district, despite the all of the naysaying that seems to be going on as part of certainly as part of this campaign. So I want to refocus the narrative. I want to make sure that people know about and hear about the good things that are going on. In addition, there are areas that we as a district and as a community have identified that we need to work on improving. Student achievement, certainly, I'm not completely satisfied with where we are at, but we are making great strides and we are working on those things that we need to work on. In addition, I want this to be a district where teachers and staff want to come and where they want to stay. And we have work to do in that area, and there are things that we have undertaken that are helping us with that, wage increases and other, and we need to continue that work.
Along those lines, we'll start with Jody here. The board did recently approved $6.65 million in salary increases that targets our more seasoned teachers. Additional pay increases are likely to be competitive, but what else can the district do for teacher retention and attraction?
Well, I think we have to focus on teacher quality of life. I think the raises went along doing that, but there are many teachers who are very concerned about their work life, concerned about losing plan time, and we talk about rearranging schedules. They're concerned that they're being overburdened by tasks that are not what they are designated to do. I think that they have concerns about administrators about listening to them. I think the special education teachers are extremely concerned because there's not enough of them. I think they feel like some of the administrators are not special education experts who are helping them with priorities, for example. And I think the class sizes, and that may be something that we can control or not, where boundaries are at, but the class sizes can do it. How many I substitute taught here a couple weeks ago, in middle school with 30 some kids, and if you don't think that class size makes a difference, it just absolutely does.
I think one of the things we need to do when we talk about teacher retention is the raises were good, they fought long and hard for us, they are good, but it's still not enough. Not enough for them to buy a house in town and actually live here and teach. It's still not enough. We're losing our teachers to other schools out of town because the pay is just enough for them elsewhere to live and work. So in order to retain our teachers here, then we need to help with the communicate with the city on the housing market to try to get housing affordable so our teachers can live here in town and work. So the raise is good, but is it enough for them to actually live in town and teach?
So just last night on the Superintendent's Advisory Council call, we were trying to talk about what we thought our focus should be for the upcoming year, and we did a thought exchange. And one of the top things that kept coming up was class size. It is something that is on the top of every teacher's mind. As Jody mentioned, about classes of 30, 31 plus, it's just a lot for them to manage. That's additional workload, as well as less individual attention, which is what they want to give to their students. They want to be there for them. So I think that's a huge piece that we need to look at and address as far as retention goes. And I think too, mental health of teachers. We need to give them outlets and ways that we can support them in their mental health, and then support them also as far as goes with dealing with students who are causing issues and that sort of thing. There's a lot of behavioral issues post-pandemic, and I think we need to find ways to support our teachers in their addressing of those behaviors.
I know that the salary increase was one of the priorities due to a survey that the school district had where they asked teachers, what do you want? What are your priorities? I think that communication needs to stay open with teachers so that they can continue to say, hey, this is what we need. And it's going to be up to the school board to think, how can we make that happen so our teachers are supported? A lot of also how teachers feel in the schools goes back to culture. We never love everything about our jobs. There's always going to be something that we don't like, but we're more willing to stay in a job when we have the support from our supervisor and from our fellow employees, and so then the culture becomes a huge issue. So it's not just pay, but we also have to make sure that the culture is supported.
I think there's a couple things that we can do. The raises were historic and they were great, but there's still work that we can do there. I think there are other things that we can do. One of the things that we're going to talk about this year is how we handle the buyback, which I think is a small thing that can go a long way to addressing that culture. I think Yolanda talked about it, which is looking at external partnerships on how we can work with the city and the county with our staff. And then I also think that we have a lot of expertise and knowledge within our staff that I think we can tap into to help solve some of the problems that we have. And as we start to utilize that expertise and start to bring those voices to the table and start to increase their feeling of value, that they can that can help with retention as well.
Thank you, everyone. Audience,
You. Ariel and I.
we can do that. Maybe once more.
So we did ask our staff, what can we do? And they told us we need to be paid better. So we did a lot of really hard work the last 2 years to make that happen. And that is one of the things that I'm very proud of that we were able to do. It's been a long-standing issue in our district, well over 2 decades that this has been a discussion, and we have finally made some progress. The other thing that they have told us right at the top of the list is they need more support in the work that they do. They really love their building leaders. They want more support from the district level. I think that's a real interesting thing to point out because often you hear criticism of our district that we're top heavy and we have too many administrators, and yet we have staff saying we're not getting enough support. So that is something that as a board and as a leader, I will be working with my board and the superintendent to work on that issue. Class size, we are going to see when our enrollment numbers come out this year that we have made progress on reducing class size because of the budget work that we have done. That is one of the, I think, lesser understood consequences of being more efficient with the way that we operate our buildings is that it allows us the flexibility to reduce class size across the district over time. So we are going to make some more progress on that. Thank you.
I'm gonna have to go ahead and say class size is pretty important. If you've ever been in a classroom with 25 kindergartners, it's great, it's wonderful, it's terrifying at the same time. I think we have to talk about addressing hard things, which teachers cited district administrative leadership as one of the reasons they leave. So teachers who leave need better leadership. It's not just about the pay is great, but I know teachers who have left and taken it. So it's more than that. I think we need a culture that supports the teacher's input and then actually uses the input to make the decisions. I think we have to trust the teachers. I don't think we trust teachers enough in this district. When they tell us things, we have to use the information. Otherwise, they're just going to keep leaving.
Thank you. Audience, at your tables are some index cards. If you would, because of the number of candidates, we are going to have time for at least an audience questions. So if you don't mind, fill those out. Just raise your hands. Paul, would you mind? Here in the next 10 minutes or so, Paul will gather those and we'll get to an audience question. Next question, let's just set it up here a little bit. Ron, if you want to set your time for 19 seconds on this one. Obviously, we went through recently the dramatic process of closing two of our schools. There's been a lot of talk of how that shouldn't have happened, but I want to preface this question by saying that what I haven't heard, and I think we haven't heard, is actually how it could have been prevented. Specifically, what changes to the budget or to the decisions would have actually prevented the school closing. So this question is going to be two options you can answer this. So Describe either what you learned from this recent process of closing 2 of our schools, or if you feel that these closures could have been avoided, explain what you would have done differently as it relates to budget, staff, or educational outcomes that would have prevented this. We'll start with you, Yolanda.
What I learned from this is that we didn't get a lot of community input from the closing. I understood there was a survey that went out, not to all families, but to specific families, about what they would have done or could have done in order to decrease class size, increase class size. However, the survey went, I didn't get it, so I can't tell you what it said. But what I learned was that it affected a lot of families, a lot of low-income families. My grandson was affected by closing the school. One grandson went to 3 different schools in a school year. The other grandson thought it was because of his behavior issues was the reason why he could no longer go to his school. He didn't understand that it was because it was a decision to close the schools. So what I learned is that we did not listen to our entire community when it came to making decisions. And that's something we truly need to change in this school board. We need to listen to the community. It's them that voted us into this position. So why are we not listening to them?
First off, I think about 10, 12 years ago, the last time there was a committee to kind of look at enrollment, they could have bet on hope. And they hoped that our district would continue to grow instead of kind of planning for the worst and expecting the worst and hoping for the best. So I think that was something that was an issue that got us to where we are. But as far as what I've learned from the process, I think we needed to start earlier. We knew this was coming. We saw it coming down the road. We closed Kennedy. Then the next year we talked about closing schools, but we didn't. So we kicked the can, and then we had this next year. We should have been having people working that entire time, scouring the budget to look to see where there were possible savings, where there was waste, and then to get it out into the community and have these conversations earlier to get more input, to get more buyback or buy-in from the city, the community that is being impacted by this. I think a lot of people felt that it was rushed, and I think having that process take a little longer would have been better. And I think too, collaboration with the city. So the city, we announced the closing of the schools, and then we need sidewalks here and there, and we didn't have the city didn't have a lot of time to respond. So I think a better collaboration with the city and other groups that are also impacted by these decisions is important as well.
So I live in Pinckney, and I live in an apartment. While I don't have a kid myself in the school district, I live around a lot of families who do. And so this was an interesting process to watch, as it was one of the schools that was first under consideration, and then they decided to close. And feelings were mixed. There were some students who were very sad, and there were some students who were like, oh, well, okay, I'll just go to another one. And the same with the families. It was not a cut and dry experience for everybody. Not everybody experienced the same thing. Some kids were excited to go to Deerfield or to go to Hillcrest because they were looking at the different opportunities that they had, new friends that they could make. There were many families who were sad about not able to continue with the school that they were comfortable with. So then just getting to watch how that process has been for kids now as they have started their schools. Again, we still have people who are sad, but we have a lot of kids who, they're excited to be in a different place, excited to be trying things. It's never ideal to close a school. And I do agree that more communication earlier to work on the process of what was going to happen. But I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing in the end, because we we know that throughout life, we're always going to have changes. And part of what Yolanda was saying, we're supposed to be preparing kids for the future, and that is how to deal with loss.
I'm going to answer that this could have been avoided in a unique way. Having served on the Elementary School Efficiency Task Force in 2010, that task force made 2 recommendations to the school board in 2011. The first recommendation was to close Walker's Valley. The second recommendation was to take a list of elementary schools, which was Pinckney, Woodlawn, New York, Schwigler, Fordley, and Hillcrest, and to close 2 or 3 of those schools, and then to pass a bond and build a large 4-section school on the east side. In 2011 or 2012, had the school board followed that plan that task force had come up with, we would not be in this situation today. We would not be in a lot of financial situations that we are in today. Instead, that school board at the time passed a bond to invest in all of the elementary schools, refurbish them, and vote on hope and growth that did not occur. And so what I learned was that for 10 years, we hoped for growth that didn't occur and kicked this can down the road, and we got to a point that we just couldn't do it anymore. And we had to adjust to the realities of our enrollment, the realities of where we are as a city, and we had to level set and move forward from here.
Well, firstly, I want to say that my kids went to Broken Arrow for their entire elementary school careers. It could not have been a better experience for my children, the best elementary school experience they could have had. I moved over there 7 years ago, so my kids could walk to Broken Arrow and Bill Mills. I understand how important neighborhood schools are. When my kids were at Broken Arrow, we had the closure of Walker's Valley, and the family moved from that. And I can tell you that closing neighborhood schools is more complicated. There's, it's very interesting when new families come in from different cultures. Well, we did this at our school, we want to do it here, but we have our own methodologies for how we do it. I'm just talking about PT, etc. And so it gets very complicated. That being said, I think that if all non-incumbent candidates are intellectually honest, there's nothing that they can tell you today that will say we could stop the closure of schools. If for nothing else, we just don't know enough about the budget, quite frankly. I mean, the budget is published, but in order to get to the details of it, it's almost impossible if you're not an insider. I can't tell you today what could have been done different in order to prevent these closure of schools. I will say that I think one of the problems is that is the communication of USD 497. For example, these things happened 10 years ago, and we talked about it 10 years ago, so shouldn't everybody in the community realize we talked about this 10 years ago? Answer, no. People don't remember, people didn't live here, people moved here since then, people don't know that's on the table. So that is something that should have been discussed quite a long time ago.
So I was part of the board in 2012 that made that decision. I actually voted to continue the discussion of consolidation because I saw the train wreck coming. But once the board makes a decision, you have an obligation as a city board member to then support the decision of the board and move the district forward. And I have been working really hard for the last 12 years to do that. We reached a point where it just was not feasible anymore. I want to say that it's, all the criticism of communication and that we should spend more time. It's really hard to get people in the community engaged in a conversation like this when it does not personally affect them. We've been talking about it at the board table every year for the last decade about how difficult our financial situation was. We spent the better part of the last 4 years starting to do this work of looking at the budget and figuring out how we could make changes. We had an intensive process over the last 2 years that involved community members, staff, and board members, and looking at all of the things that we could do differently to make this better. We listened to the community extensively, and at the end of the day, This is a math problem. It costs about $15,700 per student per year to educate a student in a building with 200 students. In a building with over 450 students, it costs about $9,500 more or less. That's $6,000 more a year per student, and we're not doing anything different. We're getting different outcomes for that extra $6,000. Our budget situation for the state is not changing, and we have had to adjust to the reality of that math problem.
I learned from school closures that the community lost trust in the district, a lot of members of the community. And I think that was because the committee that worked on futures planning committee, there was a lot of unanswered questions by the consultant used. There were errors in the consultant's projections that still have not been explained. And I think at the end of the day, if we had the talent and the skills that are in this community, I feel like if we collaborated more with KU and Haskell, it could have turned out differently. I think long-term strategic planning that includes all of the different entities in this community, I think that we have to do that for our students. And they deserve a community in Lawrence that values public education, and I think we all have to get more involved in the process. I wasn't personally affected by school closures in my family, but I watched the process, and I think that we have to rebuild the trust and be honest. Thank you.
Okay, Ariel, you can hang on to the mic. I think we'll start with you and Shannon on this next one, and Ron, stay 90 seconds on this one. I'm combining one of these audience questions with one we have here. And we'll start. So, what is your experience with organizational budgets? And in the event of either increased funding available or a reduction in current funding, what methodology would you like to see the district adopt in managing its financial resources? Yes, please.
I've started to think about this participatory budgeting process that is possible for us to do, where the community has more of a voice in the solutions to the budget problems. It's something that I know would be complicated, but if the district got input from the chamber when there were big decisions to be made about the budget, and consulted more within our own community about budget decisions in general, I think that that might be a good idea to go towards. It could be complicated to get started, but participatory budgeting is more democratic, and I think it would build trust in the community when there are more voices heard in the process. I think my experience with organizational budgets, as far as the school district goes, I think that we need a lot more transparency in what is provided to the public. I don't know if the board gets more than what we see, but I certainly didn't feel strong enough to have voted on the last budget that was provided. I would have needed more information. I still want more information. Thank you.
So I have experience managing and overseeing budgets in a number of different organizations based on the work I have done as a board member. So first of all, our school district, hundreds of millions of dollars over the last dozen years. I've also been involved in the budget process for a number of other organizations, Kansas Association of School Boards, NVIS, which is a company that provides services to school districts, National School Board Association, Action Center. I've been involved in the budgeting process for all of those. My priorities, I want to put kids and staff first. That's where we need to drive the money to our kids, programs, and services. But budgeting in the school district is driven by the services that we provide, the number of services that we provide, the number of students to whom we provide services, and the number of staff that it requires to provide those services. So it's largely driven by wages. And so that's really, when you're making decisions about where you cut, how you rearrange, you're really talking about whose jobs you're eliminating or whose jobs you're adding, because we don't have a whole lot of flexibility in any other places in the budget in terms of things that we can stop doing or stop providing. The transparency issue, all of our budget information is publicly available. You can find all of it. I do think that one of the things I want to work on as part of our re-upping of our strategic plan is figuring out how to take that budget information and really condense it down in a way, because it's out there, but I think that the issue is that it's not out there in the way that our community wants to see it. It's not that it's not available, it's not that it's not there. We just need to figure out how to take that information and make it more digestible in infographics and other ways. So that's what I would want to do to make that better.
So, as I mentioned, I run a multi-million-dollar business, which is just a portion of my company's total business. But we are constantly looking at our sales, our inventory, our markdowns, making adjustments. If I'm not hitting my sales target, I need to push out my inventory, I need to buy less. If we are beating sales, then I need to try to pull up and add more. So I understand that aspect of it. I have experience from my time on the Futures Committee. I have looked at the budget. It is complicated. It is not easy for people to understand. Possibly it's deliberate on the state's part. I don't know. But I do see, to what Shannon said, value in finding a way to translate that to the community, and because that is not easy to read. I've looked at it. I have taken copious notes over different financial presentations that the different people in the district have given. And you have to look at it with those notes to really understand what is happening. So I think finding a way to translate that and communicate it better to the community is important. And I think looking at maybe zero-based budgeting too, like what does it take to run a school district? And then what changes do we need to make possibly to better reflect a more efficient use of our funds?
So currently I'm in a supportive role, so I don't do anything in the budget. But before I got to my current job, I was a restaurant manager, and it was my job to make sure that I could pay my staff, that we could afford food costs, that we could afford repairs for equipment that was down, what our infrastructure needed. And so I have great experience with this. I've also continued to take management classes that go further into budgeting. I know that this past year, the city put forth a tool that allowed community members to look at how they are at the budget and then get input on where they thought focus should be. I think that would be a great tool for the school district to use as well. Again, it gives the community a way to see things a little bit differently, so numbers and where the money is going can be a little bit more at the forefront. I also think that Dr. Stumblingbear is doing a great job at explaining the budget. That has been the focus that she's been doing as I've been watching her reports. She is breaking it down. And for example, with the capital outlay budget, it went through what all the funds were going to be. And so I do see that this is something that the school district is trying to rectify for the community.
Outside of 4.5 years of school finance 101, I have experience with budgets and nonprofit organizations with managing budgets and things like that. But I would agree that the budget information is difficult to find and to understand, and the state doesn't make it easier with how they require us to publish it and the format with which they require it, and the fact that the formula is complicated and certain dollars can go to certain places and it can't go backwards. And it's a complicated mess. 4.5 years of trying to understand that mess takes time. And I still can get confused. And so my budget priorities, to Shannon's point, to Rachel's point, to everybody's point up here, would be to continue to make that easier to understand, to easier for the public to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, why we made a decision, how we got to the decision, and why we had to make a decision based on statute, based on restriction, based on because the state told us we had to, kind of thing would be my budgetary focus.
Well, the short answer is I don't have experience dealing with budget issues on the scale of the school district. I've been on some nonprofits. For example, I was on Tiny K, the board of Tiny K for a while, right before it was incorporated in the school district. And I've done some other stuff, for example, on the law library, board of trustees, etc. I don't think a lot of non-incumbent candidates actually have this type of budget experience, and it's something that for a lot of people, unfortunately, it's learn as you go. Which I think we heard earlier, but I think what I offer in terms of that is I do have the ability to read statutes, educate myself about that. I'm a practicing attorney. I have been in this community for over 20 years. I think that there was a comment about the budget being out there. It is on a macro scale. The problem is it is on a micro scale. It's very difficult to find things out. 2 years ago, I spent 3 months trying to get information about high school activity or high school athletic budget information from the school district. I understand we have a different finance director now, and that may be different, but this went back and forth for 3 months, and I ended up getting a very sliver of it. I sent an email back, I sent about 12 very specific questions about the budget, and I never got a response. So when we talk in terms of finding out about the budget or making budget projections or how we spend our money, this is the frustration that I'm talking about as a community member that I think everybody should be concerned about. Because when people talk budget, I think that a lot of them want to know what is it that we're spending our dollars on? What are we spending our dollars on compared to what is coming in?
So yes, some of us do have experience working on budgets. I currently sit with the Community Children's Center. So I know a little bit about budget. I understand about funding, what you can spend what on, what you cannot spend it on. We were granted $1.9 million, and I was like, yay. And then when they said, well, you can only spend it on this, I'm like, wow, we got the money, why can't we spend it? You know, but I think we need more calibration and to collab with the chamber, the city, the community, and sit down and explain to the chamber how the budget works for the school district, because it may work totally different for the district than it does for the chamber. It works different for the city than it does for the school board. So if we do more collaboration with them, then we can all get a better understanding of the budget, so that we can all make that informed decision on what we need to do for our school district. We're all here for one thing, our children and their education. That is our main focus. That is the focus has been for every forum that I sat in, and even running on the school board, even sitting in this room with all you people. You all are here for one thing, our children and their education. So we all need to get on one accord and get together and work on how we can fix the school budget collectively, so that we can get the school district that we want everybody to be a part of.
Thank you. One thing is clear is any business person that tries to tackle school budget issues is that school budgets are built for inefficiency. They're very difficult to work with. Next question. Let's see, we're going to go back to 60 seconds. We start with Rachel here and then go to Shannon. One or two of the most impactful things the district or the community at large could do to reverse the trend of declining enrollments.
This is where we need to be working with our city. Over the past decade, Lawrence has gone out of their way to recruit retirees to come to Lawrence, not families. And we need to be changing that. Looking at our census data of 2020, 17% are under the age of 18. So that 17% of our population here in Lawrence would fit in our school district age range. I know that people have said that we are having an enrollment or having an increase in population. That's where my question is where is that, or who's coming into our city? How many of those are children? If we're staying with the 17%, it's not as big of a bump as you think it is.
Three things come to mind, and see how fast I can get through three things in 60 seconds. We can continue to work on our academic performance and increase the reputation of Lawrence as a school that far outsees its surrounding peers. I think the two things that one thing that the city can do for us is to shift its mindset from no growth to growth, and to work on annexation and growth that specifically includes affordable and specific family housing. And then we've seen a declining birth rate over the last few years within Lawrence for permanent families. And so as much as this is an awkward thing to say, and it may make people chuckle, people in Lawrence can have more babies and they can stay here.
That's true.
Not sure how to answer that. You know, first and foremost, I think that I think some of the school board members need to take more issues with the city and county commissions. You know, we are fighting to get more students in our schools, but what we're competing against is the reasons that keep people from wanting to move to Lawrence. And I understand everybody who wants a special is winding up here, go to school here for 2 terms. But at the end of the day, there are real concerns about livability in Lawrence on a number of levels. And I wish that the city and county commissions would get themselves together because they are making, some of their decision making is making it difficult for people to want to relocate here. And so as much as we sometimes need to go to the legislature and complain, I think that we need to go to the city and county commissions and complain. You know, for example, homelessness, et cetera, these things need to be addressed. I think that we are losing students to Ariel, Mill Valley, et cetera. Part of that is academics, but part of it is what they see is the inefficiency of the Lawrence School District, the lack of communication. And so at the end of the day, we need to make a better product for public schools. I mean, I don't want to compartmentalize it like that, but at the end of the day, if we make things better and make it attractive to come back, we may be able to overcome some of those issues that we're dealing with on the city and county commission level.
I'm gonna pivot off Jody. We have to make it affordable for families to come here. And yes, they have recruited retirees, but are we bringing the retirees with their now school-aged grandchildren here? We have to make it affordable, so we have to collaborate with the city to make it affordable housing, to bring families here. In order to raise up our enrollment, we can't increase the enrollment with the elderly. I'm sorry, we can't. You know, the elderly are not going to elementary school. You know, so in order to raise enrollment, we have to get families here. In order for families to be here, they have to be able to afford to live here. So if they can't afford to live here, they're not coming here. And we need to work with the city in order to fix that.
So not to be super repetitive, but I do think that the district and the city and county need to work better, strategically develop plans to draw families, but I think there are 2 key things here. Affordable housing, which has been mentioned, but also jobs. We need jobs, and we need jobs that pay better so that people will come here, because people are not gonna come here if they can't get a job here. It also goes to keeping the graduates. We have KU, we have this huge draw in this town that brings people in, and then how many of them just turn around and leave? Whereas if we had the jobs, we had the affordable housing, we could keep them here, they could start their families here. That would grow our school district. And I think in addition to that, we need to do a better job of PR. It's been mentioned that, there are good things happening in this district, but we need to shout it to the rooftops, we need to change our image, really get out there and make people want to come here, assuming we have the jobs and affordable housing to support.
So the kind of collaboration that has been mentioned is happening. Our leaders of the city, county, and school district communicate regularly, meet regularly. But if you want the trajectory of the planning decisions being made at the city and county level to change, our voters have to make that change for us. The city school board members can't force that change. So that's a community decision that has to be made. I want to mention, I think the overarching issue is we have to make this a community that is attractive to and affordable to families. And that includes not only just the housing and the job issues, it also includes childcare. So if you look, we have an early child care crisis in our community, just as many communities do all across the country. If you look at Douglas County, there's about 3,000 more children between the ages of 0 and 5 who both have working parents than there are child care positions for those children. So that is, I'm seeing progress. The Children's Community Center and what they are building across from LMH is going to help with that. But this is multifaceted and it's a long-term problem that is going to require long-term solutions.
So I'd be looking for more money, right? But we need a centralized plan that focuses on developing the commercial tax base and, of course, business development. I think making Lawrence appealing for families means strong neighborhoods. I know that's part of the city's plan. Strong, welcoming neighborhoods. I think we have some great things going. The College and Career Center, Peasley Tech, expanding on those, I think would be a great idea. And supporting that in this community. I think Lawrence being attractive, it is attractive. We have a lot of complicated problems with homelessness and childcare and all of the things everybody's already said, but I think we have the resources, the talent to get more creative in our solutions.
I think the next question, which I could say was 60 seconds here, kind of dovetails there. Help us understand what you see or how you evaluate the pros and cons of tax abatement incentives, like the one you just approved downtown, that either grow the local economy or jobs in the local economy. Start with GR here and eventually start.
So for me, as a city member of the school board and as a tax authority, when that presentation came to us and as I did my research, I had to make a decision on how did that impact the school district. And the impact for the school district was a net positive. We lost, based on the way that the school funding formula works, we lost no revenue to our general fund, and over the course of the abatement, we saw a net positive increase to our capital outlay. And so, from that standpoint, it was a win. And then during the presentation, there was projected job growth, and those jobs brought a potential increase of families to the community, which was a potential increase in enrollment and an overall increase in the corporate tax base. And so that's how I evaluated it, and that's why I voted this on.
I spent 2 terms on the historic preservation, on the Historic Preservation Commission back in the 2000s. We did the L'Oreal project, reviewed that, and I'm presently on there, starting in my 2nd term, so I've been on there 4 terms altogether. One of the things that always comes up when you have a project is people wanting to tear stuff down or whatever because it's not financially feasible, right? Everything's expensive, it costs too much, it's easier to rebuild. And so, to some extent, when you look at some of the projects that come up for tax incentives, people always think, well, you just want a break, you can still do it without any regard for the financial component to building projects. And I think what a lot of people in the community don't realize is how much these things actually cost and what is financially viable. And so when we talk about, for example, the recent first management project, exactly that, we're not losing money. Like people think that we're losing money, and I'm not trying to talk in a condescending way, but the way that the tax incentives work are sort of complicated, and I think people don't understand the real dollars now versus later. And so, quite frankly, if I had known more at the time, I would have approved that project. And I think that we have to think, for example, about downtown, getting downtown cleaned up, making it want to be a place people want to go to again, because that's part of the charm of North Lawrence. And if we ignore that, we're not going to be able to move forward.
The tax abatement incentives, they are good for businesses. In turn, it's good for our community. It was good for the projection of bringing more jobs to the community, more students, more talent. And we need to make sure that we tap into those resources that tax abatement is going to bring to our community, and make sure that we build off of that and don't just leave it stagnant, and make sure that it goes to where it needs to go, and that it also improves our school district in a whole.
If I've been on the board, I absolutely supported those incentives, mostly for the reasons that G already spoke to. I think we were crazy to turn down, we'd be crazy to turn down the additional money that we get into the capital fund. I also think it's a little mind-boggling that the school district could have blown the entire thing for the city and the county had we voted against it, given that it really did impact us in any sort of negative way. And I think in general, we as this school district, the city, the county need to do a better job of educating the community about what incentives are and how they really work. And what Jody was speaking of, it's not a loss of money, it's future potential. And that's so important that people realize that we're not just handing out money to these developers. And if they weren't here, who was going to do that? Who's going to take that on if he's not willing to do that? That sat there for how long? We just didn't let it sit there. We have to do these things in order to grow the city.
I agree with everything that they have said so far. I do know that we have a couple of developers in the city that have gotten, or the community does not look favorably upon them. But I think it's important when these projects come before the school board that they are each evaluated for what they are and what they're actually giving the school board. Because we all want to make sure that our budget for the school board is funded properly so that we can take care of our students.
I think it's bad when you have property just sitting empty. I don't think that does anything for the downtown area. And I think more education about that it didn't harm the district in any way, just getting that out there more, because I know there was, it was in the newspaper, but people didn't really understand that was actually not a negative. I think anything that helps us with affordable housing, especially on the east side, I would be for. I know a few business owners on the east side, and it's true that the east side feels gypped. And so anything that focuses on development towards the east side and the downtown area, I would think it's a good thing.
I'm really pleased to hear the positive comments about this tax incentive tool at the table here today, because to be honest, this is our last forum. I've heard all of the candidates speaking on this in other spaces, and that's not what I've heard in the past. City board members have been exorciated by some of these candidates and members of the community for supporting these tax incentives. They don't have a negative impact on the school district because of the interaction of the way the tax incentive works in the school finance formula. As GR mentioned, they only have a positive because they bring us in additional dollars in our capital outlay fund. And frankly, they have in the long term an overall positive impact on moderating the mill levy for homeowners in our community. If we grow our commercial tax base and more of our mill levy is applied to that growing commercial tax base, it is going to keep our mill levy down for homeowners in our community, and that's a really important, an important thing that we can do to help grow our community as a whole.
Thank you. I know, could someone remind me, Carole,